Shana Tova. This past June, I visited Chicago with my family. My parents hosted my brother, my sister, and my families, all 17 of us, in my childhood house for the week of 4th of July. All of us had a feeling that it was a goodbye of sorts to the house. But none of us imagined what would greet us upon arrival. Garbage bags. My parents handed each of us giant black garbage bags, and we were ordered to throw away all of our stuff that we didn't want shipped back to Los Angeles with us. Now, for some context here, my childhood room was a museum to my life. 40 years of collecting art projects from preschool, elementary school Hebrew vocab tests, souvenirs from every vacation ever, baseball cards, hats, bookcases, piles and piles of photos of people I can't even remember anymore. To complicate matters, to really complicate matters, I'm married now. And I'm a saver, and Blair is a big believer in spring cleaning. As a matter of fact, Blair holds a spring cleaning in our house every single week. Makes her happy. And so to undertake this endeavor with Blair was a challenging affair for both of us, because anything that I chose to keep meant, in fact, that we were both keeping forever. So the great purge began. Amidst all of this pressure and pain, I looked for comforting guidance, and of course, I found it in the Torah. On Rosh Hashanah, we read about Abraham and Sarah, the beginning of their narrative. It can be found in Parshat Lech Lecha, in the famous command for them to go forth to the land of Israel. We read about Abraham took Sarah and Lot, vet kol rechusham asher rachashu, and all of their possessions that they had acquired. What were these possessions that they schlepped from Ur Kasdim to Canaan? The Torah doesn't explain. But apparently, Abraham and Sarah were savers as well. Later in the narrative, we're told, Vayiten Avraham et kol asher lo li Yitzchak, and Abraham gave all that was his to his son Isaac. So these unidentifiable possessions, these tchotchkes, the stuff, they were passed down to Isaac. And then it became Isaac's turn to schlep Abraham and Sarah's stuff around with him all over Canaan. And I bet that if I asked each of you to tell me about the possessions you choose to carry versus the ones you've chosen to discard, I'd hear stories about garages and storage units. I'd hear stories about cleaning out your parents' home or your spouse's closet after their passing. We all face this issue at one point or another. I know it because many times my office or the synagogue here becomes a destination for your Judaica possessions. And I get it. You don't want it, and you don't know how to discard of it, so it ends up right in front of Joanna's desk. How should we deal with an issue with which I'm struggling, and many of you have or will deal with, an issue so old that we know that Abraham and Sarah had to face it in their lives? Today, on the holiest day of the year, why am I talking about the possessions that we collectively schlep? Because today, on Yom Kippur, we stand here like angels. All of us dressed in white, without eating, none of us schlepping around any kind of material objects. We stand during Yizkor, many of us in tears, and we think about loved ones, and we think about their touch, or their laugh, or their compassion. Do any of us stand during Yizkor and think about their tchotchkes? It's clearly for a reason. It's for a reason that the Jewish tradition says that on the most important spiritual day of the year, we're supposed to be free of our material collections. There's supposed to be a timelessness about this day. I see a beauty in which our grandparents might enter this courtyard and recognize the Al-Chet, or the Kedusha, or the Torah reading, or Jonah, and they would say, it's Yom Kippur. And there's a merit in not associating oneself with the newest iPhone or the newest model car every day of the year. The tradition is trying to show us that there's a time and place for those things. Those things will trap us in a context of specificity, of the moment. Today we exist beyond time, beyond place. I didn't want to show my kids my Hebrew workbook from first grade because I felt an attachment to the worksheets, or even because I was proud of my handwriting, which apparently has deteriorated over the years. I showed it to them because of the everlasting value of the Jewish people, that no matter where we live, no matter when we live, we communicate, we value the language of our people. The paper represented the value of Hebrew. When I showed the kids my hat collection, it was filled with stories about the Bulls three-peat hat that my dad walked into the house with 2 days before the Bulls actually won the championship. And it made me the coolest kid in school the next morning. I showed my Toronto Blue Jays hat my Grandma Faye bought me at a sporting goods store when she asked me, for which team did my favorite player play? I mistakenly said that Nolan Ryan played for Toronto instead of Texas. And then I showed them the Texas Rangers hat that she bought me the very next day. Do I need that stuff in the memories of my grandparents? Do I need theatrical props to help illustrate my stories? Some of you are already shaking your heads, yes and no. During Yizkor today, if we remembered loved ones with material possessions, I'd bet that the material stuff is only included in the memory to illustrate a timeless lesson or an emotion. You're not remembering the new car your parent brought home because of the car, but rather because of the way you felt when you went for the first ride, when he or she asked you if you'd like to share a time with them. For weeks in October, we'll read about Abraham and Sarah and their family lineage in Genesis. We'll learn so much about them. We'll learn so much from them. And we'll never learn about their list of stuff that they schlepped. This is a Jewish holiday without heirlooms. There's no honey dish, no special menorah, no Seder plate. On Yom Kippur, we're here to sit and reflect with a prayer book and the Torah. We sit reflecting with our hearts and minds. On Kol Nidre, we stand together with those we love in this world, and on Yizkor, we try to touch the ones we live in the next. Today, I don't need my Mickey Mouse piggy bank, and I don't need my Taekwondo trophies either. There are quite a few of them. So why was it so difficult for me to discard of them? Because of today. And a day when all of the material possessions are stripped away, we begin to reflect on important ideas and touch those who are no longer here. We begin to comprehend the notion that time is fleeting. Childhood ends abruptly. Age creeps up on us too quickly. And life expires before we know it. These tokens of our childhood prompt memories of the past. I don't know what Abraham and Sarah carried with them, but I bet it was tokens of their past. It was memories from their parents. It was a bucket of items that always brought them back to their childhoods in Ur Kasdim. In the house over the summer, there were so many conversations that began, do you remember that time when? And you know what? My brother and my sister and I, sometimes we all remembered, and sometimes we all remembered things just slightly differently. Even if we were all looking at 3 identical Disney World pens from 1987. We all carry our memories slightly different in our heart. When we finally throw them out, in some ways, we're admitting that that Disney World vacation is finally over. throwing away certain possessions feels like it closes a chapter in our lives. It brings me back to the realization of this Yom Kippur. In the end, after we're tired of schlepping all of the stuff, today teaches us that we can actually only schlep what fits in our mind, what we can squeeze into our hearts. For some of us, that's an awful lot. We remember the name of the child who sat at the desk next to us in second grade. We remember with empathy the kid that got bullied all through elementary school. We can think back and remember first kisses, birthdays, births, so much more. Even when we're not talking about material possessions in English, we recognize there's a lot to carry psychologically. In English, we colloquially refer to this as emotional baggage. Yiddish, the stuff we schlep. Is this what Abraham and Sarah carried with them as they traveled from the old country to a new world? Undoubtedly. My grandparents arrived here to our shores after the Shoah without any material possessions and loaded with emotional baggage. This issue is so pervasive that a popular Netflix show addresses it, called Tidying Up with Marie Kondo. In it, she helps couples tidy up clutter in their homes. And by helping people with their stuff, she actually helps their relationships, their home life. She actually helps tidy up people's lives. After I completed directing my film Tortured in 2007, Blair and I went on vacation to Israel, and we had an amazing tour guide. One afternoon, we were touring Jaffa, and we asked him to take a picture of us. And he took a picture of us with his thumb directly over the lens. So we had the chutzpah to ask this Israeli to please take another picture of us. Before he would take the second picture, he told us that he had traveled all over the world, North and South America, Africa, Europe, Asia. And he always looked out on those trips with intentionality. And he knew that he'd remember what was important, and his mind would simply edit out the frivolous. And he asked us to look out at that sunset that evening in Jaffa with intentionality. If I close my eyes right now, I can see that purple sky over the Mediterranean. In my heart, I think it's the same sunset that Abraham and Sarah encountered when they first got to the land of Israel. Today is a day of timelessness. Once a year, Yom Kippur puts it all in perspective and forces our focus away from our stuff and toward our ultimate path. Without our material possessions of a moment, all we have is liturgical ideas, the presence of community, our eternal Torah revealed to us by our eternal God. As the famous liturgist Don McLean would have written about today, on Yom Kippur we come down to the sacred store, where all our generations have heard the music before, and the liturgy and the Torah are played. Blair is laughing because she knows I didn't throw out nearly enough. My parents are crying because they had to continue throwing out garbage bag after garbage bag long after I left Chicago. I'll remember them when I beat my heart and repent for Al Chet during Musaf. But only now do I realize that it's what we can't throw out. It's what I couldn't throw out. What we can't fit into a garbage bag. That's what we carry with us on Yom Kippur. And those are in fact the most precious possessions we carry in our hearts. I can't bring myself to throw it all out. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I know there's some of you out here with me. And I know that I can't schlep it all with me. The process of choosing is in fact life. I have no doubt that Abraham and Sarah lost much of their possessions over time in their journey. And as I look out at this congregation sitting here today, as their children thousands of years later, it also strikes me that Abraham and Sarah managed to pass down their most important stuff. It's that stuff that's worth schlepping around. And I pray that we schlep it around for them forever and ever. Gemar Chatima Tova. May we, all of our loved ones, and all of our most enduring safeguarded thoughts, memories, and experiences be sealed for a good year of health and happiness. Happy 5782.